So I guess I'll start and just say thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate having the opportunity to talk to you about Heritage as producing artistic director for over 20 years at Heritage.
20 years it was.
20 years exactly.
20 years out of 29.
20 years out of.
I was with the theater for 29 summers, but yeah.
So on that note, can I ask you, like, what were your first impressions of Heritage and UVA, you know, when you first came to Charlottesville?
Yeah, well, I drove down from New York. I was invited down to direct one show, The Diary of Anne Frank. This is in 1987. And, you know, little did I know as I was driving into Charlottesville that I would spend pretty much the rest of my life here. You know, obviously I drove in, and Charlottesville on 29 was very different than it is right now. There was, you know, farmland not too far out. And so I saw the university, drove around, and was obviously, you're pretty impressed when you first see the University of Virginia and its grounds. And then I met all the people at Heritage, and they were very welcoming. George Black and Levon Ho and David Weiss were kind of the three guys who were running the operation. And it seemed like a very happy theatrical organization, summer theater. And they let me know right away that all about Heritage and why it was, you know, started, and it was a place for both the students and the faculty to have a home in the summer. And the reason Heritage was called Heritage is they were trying to do the classics of American theater, hence the heritage of the American theater. They eventually ran out of good plays that were the classics. So it was also great. They also employed some equity actors, just like you guys and I did, do today and did. And so it was I was very impressed. I had a wonderful summer. My only problem that whole summer was my stage manager for Anne Frank, who stuck to the rules so closely that on final dress, when the Nazis were just about to raid the apartment, the lights came on and the show stopped because it was 10 o'clock and there was only 5 minutes to go in the show. And that was pretty much of a shock when the lights all of a sudden came on and we couldn't see the end of the show before we opened. However, it all worked fine. So I had a great time, great first summer, and I was happy when they called me the next summer within the next couple of months to say, would you like to come back and do another show next summer? So.
And how many years did you come every summer before you moved to Charlottesville to join the department and Heritage?
Yeah, I 1987, I directed one show. 1988, I directed two. I directed I'm Not Rappaport with Jim Hilgartner in the lead, who played many, many of our great character roles over the years and was a great favorite, a wonderful guy to work with. And I think I did I Do, which was the first musical they had done in the Helms that summer. And that's 88, and then 89. 88, they said, they were looking for a chair to the department, would I think about applying? And I said, sure. And I did, and didn't get the job. The guy who was the chair, who was an alum, and I'm just blanking on his name, and he was a friend. Anyway, he was the chair at Notre Dame, but he had been a UVA alum. And he was offered the job, and then it didn't work out. They invited me back in 1989, the summer. I walked in the door, they said, we need to take you out to lunch. And they offered me the position of chair of the drama department, and said, and I said I had been the head of musical theater performance at San Diego State University by that point, and I said I needed to spend a year. I wasn't going to just walk out on San Diego State, and I said, if you can agree to do that. So 1990 is when I officially began. We got here right in about a month from now, 30 years ago. May 30th, I think it was, something like that. We drove into town and moved here, and I started working for, I kept working for Heritage. It became managing director at that point, and was managing director and produced with George until 1995. When he left, and I became producing artistic director, and was chair until 2015, 15 years.
Wow. Wow. Your first summer of being producing artistic director at Heritage coincided with my first summer after my first year at UVA, started in 94. So paths continue to
Sure, of course.
after 29 years of Heritage, I'm sure that the amount of memories that you have is extraordinary. It's so many shows that you produced. Was it 97 shows?
I look back, I actually, because I was managing director before it was actually well over 100 shows that I was involved in producing, and directed 55. I did count those specifically just for this little interview here, just to, yeah. So yeah, it was a lot of shows.
Is it possible to think of like what are some of the fondest memories over all of those shows? I mean, clearly you can't share all of them, and I know that's extraordinary, the amount of memories you have, but do you have some ones that really?
Yeah, I do. I do, and some were shows that I didn't personally direct, that I hired other people to direct, and they were still, marvelous shows. I'll net, others that I did, West Side Story, Ragtime was a very special show. Sweeney Todd was a very special show. The Light in the Piazza, all of our Greater Tuna shows with Evan Bridenstine and J.P. Scheidler, The Sound of Music. When I chose The Sound of Music, I said, nobody's going to want to see The Sound of Music. And I used to kind of joke and say, used to call it The Sound of Mucus. And of course, we sold out every performance. It was one of the biggest hits. And I was very proud of the production too. So in My Fair Lady, I was very proud of. And then toward the end of my tenure, Next to Normal was I was very proud of that. Catherine Ogden was amazing as the leading lady, Diane, in that. And then I brought my dear friend from the University of Michigan, he's a professor named Malcolm Tulip, he's an Englishman, to do One Man, Two Governors. And it was such good fun, and JP was in that as well, and it was just, and then Spamalot went smashingly well. And then finally, my favorite show that I ever did, I cried at the end of every time we did Act 1 in rehearsal, and every time we do the end of Act 1, every time we did the end of Act 2, I wept and couldn't, the cast, the ensemble, and especially Rob Marnell, who played George Surratt in Sunday in the Park with George, that was my favorite. It wasn't my audience's favorite, but it's my personal favorite. I think it's one of the greatest musicals ever written, but I also think it was, for me, one of my favorite show I've ever directed. So, yeah. And so, yeah, I can, and then there's so many others that I could say, oh yeah, that was really a great, Malcolm Tulip, I had him back. He did I Am My Own Wife. which had won the Pulitzer or the Tony or whatever, a one-man show, amazing show in the Helms. And then we had, we had Gene Stapleton here with Horton Foote directing The Roads to Home, which went on to play in New York. And I directed a production of Love Letters where two actors did a table, and which is a sweet, wonderful little show. And we had Jessica Tandy's daughter, Tandy Cronin, was in the show. And Jessica Tandy flew down, 82 years old, all by herself, to see her daughter sit at a table and act in our Helms Theater, which was pretty fine. And I got to meet and had good discussions with Jessica Tandy, and that was pretty special for me too. So, those kinds of things were great to remember.
Yeah, gosh, it's amazing. It's amazing. So many different things, and so many different spaces, and so many different collaborators. I mean, I think one of the most important things that we do in theater is collaborate and work with one another. It's never just one person putting a show. There's, I think our company throughout time has been around 115 people coming from all over the country to make the work that we get to share with our community. And I'm just wondering, you've mentioned like Doug Sprigg and some of your collaborators. What for you were the things that made you want to work with someone again, and what did that mean to you? Like how did you all work so well together? What were those things?
Well, first of all, they had to be nice people that didn't have terrible egos. And so those were the directors, the designers, the actors, the crew, those people that were nice to work with were the ones that I've cherished the most. I worked with a few people that weren't so wonderful to work with, but that were sometimes very, very good at what they did too. But like Greg Harris, he and I did, he tells me we've done about 35 shows together. I don't know how many of those, most of those had to be Heritage over the years. And then Tom Bloom, who was, he's my favorite set designer, and he's one of my favorite buddies. We did so many shows together, and he would listen to what I, and then he would come up with some just great ideas, new ideas. Sometimes I remember when we did Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, Tom and I used to take long walks in the morning together. And we started talking about it and on the walk, and we finally got back in front of my house, and Tom took a stick, and in the dirt, he kind of said, well, what do you think about this and this? And the show was designed in the dirt in front of our house. I mean, he didn't finally put it on paper, of course, but yeah, but I remember us doing that. And sometimes I was able to give him suggestion. I sketched out, when we did the Spitfire Grill, I sketched out the set I wanted, where the entrances and exits and whatever. And believe me, it was the roughest sketch you could have possibly imagined. And he eventually framed it and put it up on his wall.
Oh my gosh.
So we work together, it's that kind of thing, and Gwyneth West was an exquisite costume designer. Her ragtime costumes were brilliant. And then Dorothy Smith was a person you could really talk to, and she'd really listen, and she would find ways to do things. She and Steve Warner, for instance, they were our powerhouses in their shops, and they kept it going, and Dorothy designed on top of everything else, and Steve made so much happen in the right way. I think continues to do that. And then there were the actors, you know, I mean, I've got a lot of actors, and I think I probably won't start going down the list of actor after actor, just because know all you actors, if you're listening, that how much I've appreciated working with you all, because there were very few that I ended up saying, well, I'll never hire that person back again. There were a few, just because life's too short. But for the most part, I tried to hire back, tried to be as loyal to them as they were to Heritage. And we've got some actors. Daniel Watts has told me. Daniel Watts was playing Ike Turner in the Tina Turner show, not currently on Broadway, but soon to be back, I hope. But he told me that he owes it all to Heritage. He, you know, I mean, there've just been a number of people who I think I'm proud of to say that we were a real good stepping stone.